Hi, I'm Jack. I've just finished my A-levels and I thought I'd tell you about the dissertation style EPQ I did in Year 12. I got an A star for my EPQ and hopefully this series will help you get one too. So hopefully, if you've got to this point in the series, you have a title for your project now. So what do you do next? I would recommend that you have a quick read through of the EPQ specification and any guidance you can find so you're clear about what the people assessing you are looking for and how much each of the things they're looking for weighs on your final mark. I'd then recommend creating a Gantt chart if you haven't already. This will help with your time management, demonstrate planning and organisational skills, and assessors like it. However, I've made a separate video on creating a Gantt chart, so go and check that out. While in the planning stages of my EPQ, I found it really useful to create a work log or skills and evaluation sheet that listed the work I'd done, the skills I'd gained from it, and an overall evaluation of how well it went. Keeping track of information this way was really useful when it came to filling out both the production log and then towards the end when you were writing the evaluation for your project, because I could often just copy chunks of it straight out and it kept all the information in one place. It mainly makes you think about all the skills you've used and it's a clear list for the assessors to give you marks for. It's also really helpful when it comes to your presentation, so you can take a lot of the information from that as well. I've linked a copy of my work log / skills and evaluation sheet below as an example to give you some ideas on how you might structure it and what you might include. Don't worry if not everything goes perfectly with your project, because when it comes to evaluation, you should still talk about the things that went wrong, as it shows you've learned from it. Now, production log. So you may have already started your production log, but be shortful to actually progress in as much detail as possible, as this is really part of your project as far as the examiners are concerned. You get marked on this. Don't feel as though you have to write nearly as much as I did, if you're looking at mine, in your planning review at the start of your project, as I went a little overboard there. But if you do a lot of planning or make lots of notes, do include them so as to show the assessors the work that you have done. So the next thing to do, start your research by thinking about what resources you're going to use and how you're going to get hold of them. You may already have some relevant books at home, but you need to make sure you're using a range of resources, including books, websites, journal articles. I'd recommend using Google Scholar to find relevant journal articles, but they are sometimes behind a paywall, so that can be frustrating. However, learning to use Google Scholar can also be listed as a new IT skill on your skills and evaluation sheet. Relevant books might be found in school, your local library, or bought from Amazon or eBay. Websites that are sourced are least likely to be reliable, so if you're using them, look out for any bias or information that's inconsistent with your other research. However, they are usually free and easy to access, so they're very convenient and can be useful. Also, check the domain name to see if it's commercial, educational, or a government site. You need to ensure that the majority of your sources are likely to be reliable and high quality. Look at when the source was published. Is it still relevant today, or have things moved on? Who is it written by, and what are their credentials? Are they likely to know what they're talking about? How accurate and reliable is it? Is there any evidence of any sort of bias or an agenda? Don't immediately discard less reliable sources though, as these can be critiqued in your evaluating your sources list, which you get marked on. So it's important that your evaluating your sources section isn't just a long list of this source is great, this source is great. Have some bad ones in there to show you actually analysed them. Evaluating your sources is a very important part of your project, so don't forget to do it, and do evaluate in each source in as much detail as you can. Be sure to note down all the information you need from each source to include it in your bibliography or references. It's much easier to do this as you go than to come back once you've finished and try and find all the information you need after you've written your essay. You'll definitely need to know things like the title, the author, the publisher, and the date when it was published, if it's a book or an article, or the date accessed and the URL for a website, because of course those change over time. When reading sources, I found it useful to make lots of notes and also to write down any quotes that stood out to me and I thought might come in useful when I actually wrote my essay. So when deciding on how to structure your essay, I'd recommend breaking it down into 4 or 5 sections. These smaller chunks make it feel more manageable, help to keep you focused, and then you can then evaluate each section individually on your skills and evaluation sheet. So first section will be the introduction, which should draw your reader in, explain your aims and objectives, and give an overview of your project. You might also want to explain some of the key terms to ensure your project can be more easily understood. If you have a lot of key terms, consider having a glossary at the end of your project so that key terms don't take up too much of your word count. I'd recommend you plan to write around 150 to 250 words for your introduction, keeping it brief will allow you more words to the main body of your essay. You might be wondering about whether you need to include an abstract. It's not required, and I decided against it as it wasn't clear to me if it would be included in the word count or not, but you could do it. I would suggest splitting the main body of your essay into 2 or 3 parts, each with their own heading for coherence. 1 or 2 of these may be more research-based, and the other 1 or 2 more discussion and evaluation-based. Each of these sections can be discussed separately, as I've said, on your skills and evaluation sheet, as they will involve using different skills and thus have different challenges and successes. The first section may take a historical look at the subject to examine changes or developments over time, as I did. The second section might discuss current trends or give a more detailed or specific explanation of the subject. And then the third section might draw on the previous sections, will definitely focus on the title of the essay, discussing and evaluating both sides of your question. So for each of these sections, I'd recommend the word count to be between 1,500 and 2,000 words, depending on if you have 2 or 3 sections, as the sections need to be long enough and in-depth enough to actually be worthwhile having as a section. The final section of your essay will be your conclusion. You need to attempt to answer the question you asked in your title by coming down on one side or the other based on your discussion in the previous section of your essay. Now, this is a really important part of your essay. I unfortunately had to skimp a bit on this section to make sure I kept inside the word count, but I would suggest you plan to write 250 to 500 words in this section. In planning each section, you could write a list of bullet points of things you want to include, pick out specific quotes from research, and those you think could illustrate your points really well, and make a note of any questions or uncertainties you have that you need to research further. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to check out the other videos in this series.